go around.
Oh.
The Red Museum is like a church.
Okay.
You walk in, I've never seen a museum.
I've been to the whole thing.
Yeah, this you walk in, it's got everything in there, just like you do. What do you mean? You go in, you fly. Because it's like.
Hello, my name is Willett Hancock with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Project. Today is the 22nd of July in the year 2022. I'm joined by
Ronan Hart, I think it's 27th July.
7th. Yeah.
Alexandra Leon,
Chloe Choi,
and Laura Tamayo. And then our interviewee is...
You can go.
You have to say
Yeah.
Ishmell Edwards. That's Ishmell.
Thank you. And then Edwards, E.W.
Edwards.
Thank you. All right, so to begin, could you tell us where and when you were born?
I was born in New Albany, Mississippi on July 29th, 1949.
Oh, happy women's birthday.
Thank you.
Great. Were you born at a hospital or at home?
I was born at home.
At home? Was there a midwife present?
There was a midwife. Yeah.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have had nine siblings. Two are deceased now, but yeah. And we all, I think, except maybe the last two, my brother that was older than me, he was born in the hospital because there were complications, and so they thought they were going to lose my mother and him. And then the other, I guess, 7 of us were born at home with midwives, and then my 2 younger brothers, I think they were born in the hospital. Yeah.
All right. You said you were born in New Albany. Did you grow up there as well?
Grew up in New Albany in a small community called St. Mary, which at that time it was kind of in the country. And of course now the city limits have expanded beyond our property. I grew up on a small farm out there. We had a small farm, and interestingly, those of us that lived on the north side of Braden Road families owned their own property. And because my dad and mom owned where we lived, and then on the south side of Braden Road was a huge farm with a lot of sharecroppers. So we all grew up together there. And, and everybody on the north side of the road was black, and everybody on the south side, it was mixed on the south side. You had black sharecroppers and white sharecroppers. But we all grew up together, stayed in each other's houses, ate at each other's houses, and really the only time that we were segregated was when we went to school and church. Other than that, we were together.
Where did you go to school?
High school was B.F. Ford High School there in New Albany, which was the only school for the county for blacks.
Yes.
Now, when I started school, I started in a little church school, St. Mary, and I went there until through 5th grade, and then I went to B.F. Ford, where they consolidated all of those little church schools and so forth to B.F. Ford High School. And then I finished high school in 1967. My plans were to go into the military, get in an engineering corps, and learn how to build roads and bridges and do 20 years and then come out and start my own business. My dad was a World War II vet, and he had pretty good experience in the Army, so that was where my plans.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, the Vietnam War was at its height.
Mm-hmm.
And my high school senior class, there were maybe 36 of us. And I guess about half and half in terms of male, female. But before the summer was over, about 8 of my classmates had been drafted, and all of them headed to Vietnam. And they came up with a lottery system for the draft, and I had a pretty low number. And so I was sent to Memphis to be examined. Not only me, a whole bunch of us. But before I left, I asked the lady over the local board if there was anything I could do to stay out, because I really wanted no part of that war. And she said to me, if you can get into college someplace, well, first she said, if you get back from Memphis, because they were shipping them out from the examination. She said, if you can get back from Memphis and get into college someplace, I will do what I can to help you out. So the bus, I left Memphis, and the bus made a stop right between Mississippi Industrial College and Rush College. And I was a Methodist, so I was familiar with Rush in terms of name and so forth. So I got off the bus and went over to Rush, and this was in the middle of September. School had been going on about a month, and I had $25 to my name and nothing else. And they let me in school, and I graduated in 4 years, and started working there actually a month before I graduated. But I had, and I'm sure you all are familiar with work study, I had work study in the physical plant department. And then a new president came in '67, so there's quite a bit of construction going on and rearranging offices and building offices and so forth. So I would work nights and weekends doing that, and that's how I paid my way through college.
So when you showed up there initially a month late with $25 and you wanted to get into the school, was it like all you had to do is say you would do work study? Were there scholarships involved, or?
No, I didn't even have a transcript at that point, and of course I had, had school to send one later on, but I had no scholarship. All I had was $25, and I think work study may have been $200 a semester or something like that, and then I promised to pay my bill, and they accepted that.
It really used to work different.
Yeah.
What did you study?
Social science.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, minored in sociology.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any specific interests within that field?
Well, I thought I might go into social work. They didn't have a social work major at that time, but I thought that I'd probably go into social work. But as I say, I worked in the physical plant and through work study and nights and weekends, and so I graduated in August of '71. But they hired me in June 1st of '71 as assistant director of physical plant. And so that was my start there. And from assistant director of physical plant in '75, the athletic director retired, and he recommended me to become athletic director, and I got the job. And so in 1975, I became athletic director and director of student activities. And then I also did career counseling, a number of other things in the process. Associate Dean of Students, then Dean of Students, then Director of Development, and then Vice President of the college. And during that whole time, the president was nice enough. Actually, he encouraged and pushed me to go on and get my master's, and then to go on and get my doctorate. And he would always say, "This is a credentialed society." He said, "You know, you need the credentials. It doesn't mean you know any more than anybody else, but if you got the credentials, you can get in the door and have the opportunity to move up the ladder." So through his, as I put in my dissertation, through his insistence, persistence, and he's the kind of person, if he got on you about something, he didn't, you know, he may not mention it for a week, but you better believe he's coming back with it again and again and again. So, yeah, and his name was Dr. William Asbury McMillan. He was the president when I was a student, and I worked on his administration until he retired. Yeah.
So, when you're an undergraduate at Rust, would you have ever guessed that you would have stuck it out there through your whole career?
Had no idea at all, you know. Didn't even think I'd ever work there. I mean, you know, it just never crossed my mind. But it just, I was fortunate enough to be offered the position, and I accepted. As a matter of fact, throughout all the positions I held at the college, I only applied for one, and that was the Dean of Students job. And the only reason I applied for it was because one of my colleagues had applied, and so to make things right, you know, I had to apply, but that was the only one. All the others were offered to me. So.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that you especially liked about Holly Springs as a town that made you want to stay here?
No, there really wasn't. Even though I was from New Albany, which is 35 miles southeast of here, the environment was kind of night and day different in the two places. And in New Albany, which was in Union County, countywide, African Americans were about 14%. And here, I don't know what it was then, but it was probably 55% maybe black here in Marshall County. So, you know, in Union County, blacks were really not a threat. There weren't enough of us concentrating in any area to really hold any political position or anything. Here, blacks were more of a threat because there was a lot more of them. So the racial tension here in Marshall County was much different than in Union County. As I say, growing up, you know, I had white friends that were just like my black friends. I mean, we shared everything, and families were that way. My dad got sick, and the first $100 bill I saw was from the overseer of the farm where the sharecroppers lived and worked. the overseer gave my dad a $100 bill. That's the first $100 bill I remember seeing. So the racial tension here was much worse and much more obvious. I'm sure we had it there, but I didn't really experience it. Other than going to separate schools and that kind of thing.
So it was kind of a culture shock coming here and being in that new kind of environment.
I wouldn't say a culture shock. It was different, and in a situation where, at a college that was predominantly black, I experienced black people in leadership positions, certainly at the college, and they were a lot more involved in the civil rights movement than the people in Union County where I came from. But I wouldn't say it was a shock. It was just a different experience, and
Did you belong to any organizations or anything like that in Rusk College, or where did you find community there?
Yes, I joined Omega Psi Phi fraternity. As a matter of fact, I'm a life member. How many years? I went over in '68, so I'll tell you a long time. Also, I joined Alpha Phi Omega, which is a service fraternity, and always the church. We were required to go to Asbury Church, which is the church where Russ was founded. And so we were required to go there at least one time. They would take all freshmen as a part of our orientation to Asbury, to that church. And but as I guess rebellion or whatever, for a little period of time, I didn't go to church, but that didn't last long. It was just in my blood, I guess, so I joined that church and been a member ever since as well.
And what was the political atmosphere like at Rusk?
It was really a good training ground and the reason I chose Omega because when I went to college, I had a cousin who was an AKA, but I didn't, in high school I didn't know what that was. I just see her with that pink and green sweater on. And I had a teacher who was a Zeta. And so I didn't know anything about fraternities and sororities. But there was a competition at the college of which organization would have the highest GPAs, which organization would have the most students in leadership positions. And Omega, the president was an Omega. Several of his top cabinet people were Omegas. Omegas were SGA and class president. So that's what led me to Omega.
Would you say you enjoyed your time as an undergraduate?
The best days of my life. I worked hard, I played hard, I chased girls hard. I didn't study that hard, but they were the best days of my life, really. I'll tell anybody in your undergrad years, enjoy them. Because once that's over, you're working and everything is, bills and So enjoy it.
Oh God, that's scary.
Enjoy it. Take advantage of it.
And you said you had a mentor that encouraged you to do a master's or a doctorate. Did you ever pursue that or want to pursue that?
Yeah, I did. I pursued both. I got my master's in 1981, and I got my doctorate in 1993. doctorate in higher education leadership, student personnel, because that's what I was in at that. Well, when I started the program, that's what I was doing. But by the time I ended, the president asked me to become director of development. So I went into fundraising at that point. But yeah, and I got my master's in student personnel also.
And were both those degrees from Russ?
No, both of those. I got my bachelor's in social science from Russ, and I got my master's and my doctorate from Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. Yeah.
How was that different?
I had pretty good years down there too, pretty good experiences. But my first semester in the master's program, I had a professor who was a racist from his heart. But I didn't know it. My advisor tried to tell me in a diplomatic way, you know, and I didn't pick up on and didn't understand what he was saying. And so I got a C out of his class. The class was the junior college, and there were 4 of us black in there. I got the highest grade. I got a C, and a black girl got a D, and then the other 2, one from North Carolina, I forget what other from, they got F's. You know, he was, and I called him and set up a meeting with him because I had all my stuff, and his tests and notes and everything he'd been doing for years and years. The paper was about this color, you know, that was once white. He'd been doing it for years and years, and so some of my white classmates had all of his notes, all of his tests, and everything. And so we get together after class and go over to one of them's house, and he had all kind of beer, imported beer from all over the world. And we drank beer and go through the stuff, you know. So, hey, I knew I had an A, I mean, but at least give me a B. But anyway, make a long story short, my advisor, that's when he told me, he said, "Ish, I tried to tell you that you might not want to take that class." And he said, that was the reason. He said, but you know, you made an A in my class, so that'll balance out that C, so you know, you're still good. Really, but that was the only bad experience I had, and I'm glad I was a little older and more mature, because had I been an undergrad, for example, it'd been pandemonium, you know. But I had very good experience. One of my classmates told me, this was, I was working on my doctorate then, and one of the fraternities at Ole Miss brought 3 students, 3 pledgees, and put them off on Russ campus with nude, with K, each one of them had a K on them, KKK. So the security officers called me, and by the time I got there, he was scared. They were scared, and so they had called the city police and a whole bunch of stuff. So I just put the guys in the car and carried them back to campus, and Sparky Reardon, who was dean of student at Ole Miss at the time, he and I, you know, if our students go down there and act a fool, he and I had to work it out, and I'd deal with them, and same thing there. So that's the way we handled it. And but the media, Associated Press, all of them, they tried to make me say that it was a racial issue, but I never said it was a racial issue. I just said it, you know, it was college print, college kids putting the print. Now whether it's racial or not, I don't know, and don't really care. But that's the way I handled it. So some of my black classmates say, "Look, and you got it, man. You got it easy, cause you know they respect you. They look up to you the way you handle that situation. Well, I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but I had no problems. And when I walked across the stage and got my degree, the chancellor told me, said, "Ish, you should have gotten your degree in conflict management." So, yeah, that was Dr. Gerald Turner. But I had a good experience at Ole Miss. We and I worked full time through all of my degrees, and with the master's and the doctorate. In addition to working full time at Rust, I also officiated basketball, baseball, softball, and stuff. And I guess that's why I can't sleep now, because on average, if I got 5 hours of sleep a night, that was great. And now I can't. I still can't sleep.
I'm somebody who's got to get my 8 or 9 or 10.
Oh my goodness.
I just love to sleep. Do you have any mentors that stick out to you during your education?
Yeah, 3 actually that stick out more than any others. One was my high school coach. He was one of the best coaches, I think, in the country, in my opinion. But he, you know, he was somebody I could talk to about anything, and you know, we just sit down, and if I had something on my mind, I just asked him, and he'd give me his opinion, and so I thought the world of him. And another was the director of physical plant, whose name was John Davis. Ernest Kennedy was my high school coach's name. But John Davis was director of physical plant, so that's where I got my start, you know, working with him. And he mentored me and guided me, and you know, if there was any extra work to be done, I was allowed to do it, make extra money. Matter of fact, as a student, I was making, it wasn't a great deal of money, anything like that, but I was making more than some of the regular employees. But you know, I was putting in hours, putting in time, and they got kind of upset about it. I later became their boss, and then, but Mr. Davis, he was a real mentor. He the first new car I bought and started my credit, he co-signed for me to buy a car. And
What kind of car?
I bought it was a 71 Ford Galaxy 500. Yeah. And the first time I drove in Memphis, he had a new Caprice, Chevrolet Caprice, and I was a student then. You know, I think it was a 66. No, it was a 68. But anyway, he wanted to get his service, and he called me Ed. He said, "Ed, take my car to Horn Chevrolet and get his service for me. It's time to get his service." I called him Chief. I said, "Chief, I've never driven in Memphis." He said, "Oh, you can handle it." I said, "Chief, I said, I don't think I can handle it." He said, "Here," gave me the key, and my arm, when I got to Horn Chevrolet downtown Union, my arms were cramping because I was holding that steering wheel. So, but that was the first time I drove in Memphis, and I don't know if you've driven in Memphis. It's still a nightmare. Yeah, and then Dr. McMillan, who was the president of Rust, and the one who insisted and persisted that I go on and get the other degrees. That, you know, if you're going to stay in education, you need the degrees. And I forever thank him for that, you know.
And after you got your doctorate, did you just go back to Russ and?
Yeah, I mean, I was still, as I say, I was working full time. I was, when I started working on my doctorate, I was dean of students, and then I guess it was in '92 when Dr. McMillan asked me to take the director of development job. And yeah, but through it all, and then I never took advantage of it, but he told me, you know, if you need any time off, you know, he said, I'll give it to you. You go on and get your degree. The only time I took off was when I was finishing up my dissertation, and I was on the NCAA Minorities, Interests and Opportunities Committee. We had a meeting in San Francisco, and the meeting was 3 days. Then I stayed another 4 days. My wife went with me. She was touring the city, and I was locked up in the room finishing up my dissertation. Matter of fact, that's where I finished it. So, you know, I had all my data and everything.
What'd you write it on?
The history of Russ from 1866 to 1967. Yeah.
Seeing that you wrote your dissertation on the history of Russ, what stood out to you about its development?
From rag to riches, I guess. As I say, it was founded in Asbury United Methodist Church. Well, at that time it was Methodist Episcopal Church. And Dr. A.C. McDonald, who was from the north, and white missionaries, you know, came down to establish churches for the newly freed slaves. And Moses Adams, who was a recently freed slave, was the pastor. And they were in the process of electing officers for the church. And Dr. McDonald said he had never seen people so interested in working in the different positions of the church until he got to church clerk or church secretary. And Moses Adams told him, said, nobody can read or write. And from that he said, well, we will establish this church, but we will also establish a school. So out of that, Russ was born. And when I retired, we had an endowment in excess of $50 million. And I can remember when we had no endowment when I was a student even. And then, but we, you know, so from rag to riches, and taking, in the beginning they say we're taking them from 8 to 80. And it, you know, they started from elementary school and then went on through, and then as they started to build school for blacks, then, you know, they cut out the elementary and the high school and so forth, and went strictly to college. Yeah, but to see and live the growth of the institution. So I worked there 51 years. I just retired last June of, not June 2022, June 2021. Yeah. I worked under three presidents, because the new president, I worked on her supervision for a year. Yeah.
So earlier you were talking about the political atmosphere at Rust when you were an undergraduate. You called it a training ground. Could you elaborate?
Really, you would go through much of the same process as if you were running for a political office in the city or county or state. And that's why I said it was a training ground to get your feet wet and get in your blood kind of. I ran for city council here in Holly Springs a number of years ago. I lost by 62 votes. And but the reason I ran, my street still had that tar and gravel on it, and a lot of potholes and stuff. And I spoke to the alderman for the ward that I lived in about doing something for our street. And it really wasn't too bad for me because my house was the first house on the left on the street. But the further you go down the street, it was just terrible. And he said to me, "Oh, well, I'll tell you, Brother Edwards, this city ain't got no money." I said, "Well, the street that goes in front of your house just got paid." "Oh, the city ain't got no money." And when he said that, when I left him, I went and qualified. And that's why I ran. And interestingly enough, about 6 months, I guess, after the election, he told me, he said, "Well, son, I tell you. You had me scared. I started to just give up. You had me scared. But I said, oh, I just can't give up. He said, but I'm going to tell you how I got you. He said, I had folk in Memphis vote. I had folk in Oklahoma vote. And he just named different. I had dead folk vote. And he said, that's how I got you, son. I said, well, okay, well, you got me, so. But I got my street paid. Yeah, I got my street. Yeah.
Was that your last brush with trying to go for political office?
Yeah, that was it. I didn't run for anything else. I'm on the city election commission now, and I ran. I had to run for that, but I had no opposition, so that wasn't a problem. But it just kind of get in your blood, I guess, when you see all the working, and especially with the fraternity, even now. You talking about political? We just had our conclave in Charlotte, North Carolina last week. I didn't go, but both my sons are homemakers also, and both of them went. But it's you want to see politics at work. So it's political. It's political. Cutthroat political. Yeah.
So running for city council, what issues with Holly Springs did you focus on, or did you feel like you wanted to improve?
Streets first.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure. Because we still, most places probably don't have sidewalks. A lot of places we don't. But streets, sidewalks, and what else? I had about 4 things on there. I can't remember what they were now. I don't think I said anything about, and I probably did. Improving the school system. That's always a good one, And I know I did have things for youth to do because I was running a program at that time and ran it for 31 years. I don't know if y'all ever heard of the National Youth Sports Program. Yeah, well, I ran it for 31 years and had over 600 kids in that program for 5 weeks during the summer. And so, something for the kids to do. And believe it or not, even now, I still have former participants come up to me and say, man, I wish we still had that program. They talk about, how it helped them, kept them out of trouble, and they learned to play sports that they never would have attempted, and they would love to have their children, some of them grandchildren, in it. And it was supposed to go from 10 to 18. And I had one young man who we'd always have a tournament at the end. And he had blue ribbons all over his neck. He won everything he competed in. And for 3 years, which means he started when he was 7, he was tugging on my shirt. He said, Mr. Evans, Mr. Evans. I said, what is it, Ryan? I'm 5 to 10. He kept it a secret all that time. Well, he said, I'm 5 to 10. And then we had one kid in the program who learned to play tennis and got a scholarship to University of Las Vegas. Yeah. But a number of good stories. Matter of fact, I ran into a young man a couple of weeks ago who, of course, I didn't remember him, but he remembered me, and then he told me that he was in the program, and he's doing, extremely well. And he based that on his experience. He said he even went to college because of the experience he had, over at that program. So youth certainly was a concern. Jobs, just the things that would get attention. But my main motivation was to do something for the streets.
Do you think Rust should have a role or can have a role in improving Holly Springs in general?
Yes, and I think it does in the sense that the amount of money that they put into the local economy, employees who live here, because they're more spread out now, some live in Memphis, Olive Branch, South Haven, Tupelo, but for a long, long time, everybody that worked here, almost, I'd say 95% lived right here in the city. And even now, many of those who live in other towns or cities still do their banking here. Other than Walmart, you don't have very much to shop for, places to shop for, that kind of thing. But the money that the institution turn over in this community is tremendous.
Do you think they interact enough?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about enough, but there's plenty of interaction. Of course, I'm sure there could be more. But Russ has always been open to the community, even though some people used to feel, I don't know if they still do, that Rust kind of looked at itself as being elite and kind of off, but it was a misunderstanding. We always opened up everything we had to anybody, that if it was legal, our facilities, everything. And as I say, that youth program with, 600 kids, and then we had an Upward Bound program that probably had like 400 in it or whatever. So we've been generous. The college has been generous with this facilities and everything else.
So from your undergraduate years until retirement, how have you seen Rust change?
Certainly, the growth in terms of fundraising, being able to meet the needs of the students, and we in the 51 years that I worked there, never missed a paycheck, never had to wait for a paycheck. But when I was a student, that wasn't the case with some, you know, sometimes they had trouble meeting the payroll, and then the fiscal plant probably grew from I don't know what it was when I was a student, but it's probably valued at, you know, about $80 million now, and the majority of faculty now hold terminal degrees, whereas back in the day you had more master's degree teachers or whatever than doctorates. We, as I say, we've always been open to any and everyone. If they had a desire to come to college and put forth the effort, then the school would try to make a way for them, like it made a way for me. And of course, it's still doing that. And now it's under new leadership, first female president, and because a lot of people are excited about that. And so, you know, the school is progressing. She's a Yale undergraduate. Yeah, I don't think she did not attend a historical black school at all. And of course, before that, all of our leaders attended historically black schools because, well, I guess one reason that was the only school they could attend, you know. And the solidarity of the institution, I think, comes from Dr. McMillan, my mentor that I talked about. He served his 26 years as president, and Dr. Beckley, who followed him, served 26 also, I believe, 26 or 27 years. So I think it's having a leadership, stable leadership, goes a long way. Now that's almost unheard of now. You know, president get 5-6 years, you're kind of lucky. But I think that stability at the top and having leadership that came from a similar background as the students come from, you know. You know how the kid come into my office with head hanging down and just doesn't see any way he or she can make it, you know, and want to drop out. Well, if you give me 15, 20 minutes of your time, I think I can change your mind and change a lot of minds like that. So, you know, that again is very important. People who care and want to see you do extremely well. I always told my students, I want you to do better than I've done. You know.
So how about Holly Springs? How's Holly Springs changed?
Holly Springs, it has changed. There's not as much racial tension here as it was back in the day. Of course, the African Americans are the majority now in both the city and the county, and we've got the African American mayor. I guess she's the fourth, I guess, first lady, but the fourth African American mayor. We've got Board of Supervisors. Three of them are African American, and you know, back in the day, all the positions back in the day were white, you know, majority population. So I guess it had to change. And then white kids, black kids too now, once they graduate high school and go away to college, they don't come back. My oldest son went to school in Texas, and he's never been back, to live. And my youngest son went to Russ, but he lives in Arkansas now. And my oldest son lives in Birmingham. And as I think about the kids that grew up in church, in Asbury Church, once they go to school some other place, they don't stick around. And I'm sure I know much of that is because of the job opportunities. You can't you can't make it off of what's available here, and so they go away.
What do you think it would take for the town to change that and try and keep kids and keep that talent here?
Well, we'd have to bring more industry in, and technology, things that young people are interested in doing and working. Now, we're improving because Chickasaw Trails, I don't know if you've heard about it, the Chickasaw Trails is an industrial complex up in the northwestern part of the county. And that's where stuff is coming in. Volvo, a number of industries are coming in. Amazon, that's what I was trying to think of. So they got a number of industries coming in there. So more of them will stick around, but those with good jobs, and these are good paying jobs too. They right now are living and buying and building homes in DeSoto County, South Haven, Olive Branch, Hernando, But it's just a matter of time before it'll be in Marshall County because they're going to run out of space there. And, it's got to come this way. Matter of fact, I'm sitting on some property just off of the interstate that I'm waiting on. I'll probably be going to Glory, but my boys, they should get some good money from it.
Do you have questions?
Actually, I have a question. You've been working with students for pretty much all of your life. Are there any memorable students that come to mind that maybe went on to do politics or just doing great things in general?
Yeah. There's one, Adolph Hopper, who's a OBGYN. There's Ron Colin, who's owns a construction company. Has done exceedingly well, we've got them in D.C. working in various positions with congressmen and senators and so forth. Just about every walk of life. Certainly, I don't know if I mentioned, but Rust is a church-related institution, and so in the ministry, there are quite a few in the ministry. Politics, just about every walk of life you can think of, we've got students. I was in the eatery a couple of Sundays ago, and there were three young ladies who came up to me. One lives in Jacksonville, Florida. One, she's retired now. She's done so well. another one in Jackson, Mississippi, who's in science, something or another, she was telling me. And the other one was an educator. But one of them I remembered by name. The other two, you know, I remember by face, but names I didn't. But once they told me who they were and some of the experiences, because I was dean of students when they were there, and one told me that she thanked me for giving her a second chance. And she said, "Do you remember what I did?" I said, "No, I don't." And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I dealt with hundreds of disciplinary cases. I said, no, I don't remember what you did. But she told me what she did. I still didn't remember. But she said, you gave me a second chance. And I did remember her saying this: if you give me another chance, you'll never see me in your office again. And she said she kept that promise. The next time she saw me was at my mentor, Dr. McMillan's funeral. And but there, you know, there are situations I think about a young man who was from North Carolina, stayed in trouble all the time. And I put him on a very, very strict probation. And even to the point where if you leave campus, you get my permission. And I was also moonlighting as a deputy sheriff. So one Saturday night I was moonlighting and went in this club, and I wouldn't have seen him, but I saw somebody, you know, ducking and dodging. So I eased around behind folks and stuff and got close enough to see who it was. And so I went up to him and I said, be in my office at 8 o'clock Monday morning. This was on a Saturday night. And he came and I told him, I said, look, I was in another position doing something else there. I said, so you don't have to worry about that. And matter of fact, he was down here last November and he was still thanking me. But he said, the worst whipping he got was from that point that Saturday night until that Monday morning when I told him it was okay. He was worried to death. Yeah.
So going off, this is Alexandra, by the way, going off of your work with students and when they remember and recognize you, how would you say those experiences with the sports program could help them shape their leadership and improve the youth presence in Holly Springs?
Well, as a part of that sports program, we had the name of it escaped me, but it was a leadership type enrichment, we call it, where we taught personal hygiene, we taught how to study, good study habits, leadership and positivity and that kind of thing. And so for many of those students, I think the direction they took in life and in their life profession was from that foundation, from that experience in the youth program. We would take the worst ones, and some of them were really terrible, but we would take the worst ones to Parchman, which is a state penitentiary, and let them tour it and let inmates talk to them, and that helped a lot of them. One prisoner who was in there for life without parole had killed a couple who owned a little convenience store, but he got strung out on drugs and needed some money to get some drugs and killed that couple, and was in there for life without parole. And he told them that he talks so bad, he scared me. He said, and he had killed a guy since he was in prison. And he said he killed him because the guy disrespected him. And I said, what do you mean disrespected you? He said he stepped on my toe and didn't say excuse me. And he killed him with a shank. And he told there was 2 guys in that group that were really terrible. And he could look at them and tell that they were troubled or going to be troubled. And he told each one of them, he said, if you don't change your ways, you're going to be my girlfriend. And believe it or not, both of those ended up in prison. But many of them said, I tell you what, Doc, that changed my mind. You don't have to worry about me. But so, a lot of different things we did in there. We said sports because that was enticing, that'd get them to come. And we had sports, swimming, tennis, basketball, football, soccer, so forth. But we had other things in there that would help them hopefully mature and become productive citizens.
I'm curious if you have any standout memory with the sports teams, like anyone making a championship or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't. Well, I did mention that I was athletic director. Then we won the National Little College Athletic Association National Championship in 1977, I think it was, up in Norfolk, Nebraska. Men basketball. And then our women won the NCAA Division III championship in 1984, women's basketball. And we had 2 young ladies, the Davis sisters, who were from Natchez, Mississippi. They did not win the NCAA tennis championship, but they were runner-ups. And then we've had a few young men to go to minor league baseball. I don't recall any who made it to the major. But a number of good athletes, over the years come through. And again, another thing about sports and athletics, I think it's one of the best training grounds for leadership. A lot of those athletes go on to become leaders in their communities and leaders in their jobs and so forth. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that did. The Swisher Championship. So, kind of unrelated to that, can you say anything about maybe your family? Do you have any kids?
Yes, I do. I have 2 sons. Marcus lives in Birmingham, Alabama. He works for the Jefferson County School System. He's a student services supervisor for Jefferson County School System. He matter of fact, just finished his doctorate in June of this year, May of this year, and his wife is an assistant principal, is a principal in the Bessemer Elementary School there I think that's Shelby County, but one of the suburbs of Birmingham. They have a son, Ryan, son, his name is Emmanuel Jeremiah, we call him EJ. And EJ will be a sophomore this year at some school in Kentucky. I can't ever come to him. He plays football for their NAIA institution. And then they have a daughter, Ryan. Ryan is a sophomore in high school this year and goes to Thompson high school. And let me just say, since I mentioned Thompson, Thompson has won the high school football championship the last 3 years in a row. And my grandson played on that team. And Ryan plays volleyball and basketball. And then my other son, his name is Kevin. He lives in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And he's a property manager there. And his wife has 4 girls, all girls. And I told him I should just stop. Y'all can't make a boy. I need somebody who's gonna carry my name on. You know, girls, change their name, change to something else when they get married. You know, but anyway, and his wife works for Nestle Corporation there in Jonesboro. Yeah.
How'd you meet your wife?
That's an interesting story.
Good.
As I told you, I did my work study for physical plant. And the dormitory that she was living in was a 3-story, not brick, just frame, building, wood, so, and I was building a fire escape for that dome. And I'm on the outside, I'm at a window on the second floor working on this fire escape, and I see some legs coming down the hall. And the closer they got, the better they looked. And when she got close to the window, and I spoke, and she spoke, and I asked her name, and introduced myself and stuff. And that's where it started. And then later on that evening, I saw her in the student center and charmed her a little bit. And so we started dating, a little while after that. And been married, what is it, 22? Been married in 70, 52 years. Yeah. We got married my junior year in college. And she was, I was a freshman and she was a junior. And I often teased her, told her she was a cougar, a Robin Craig. But that's, we've had a great relationship these 52 years. The only thing we ever used to argue about was her spending money that we didn't have. And so the way I solved that is I said, you put this amount into a joint account that we'll pay bills out of. I'll put this amount in there. You take the rest of yours. You do whatever you want to with it. You spend it all. You don't come to me to bail you out. And I'll take the rest of mine and do the same. So, and I, before then, I was letting her manage the bills. And that wasn't working out. So I started managing everything, and it worked out. And I don't remember us arguing about anything else.
I'll keep that in mind. That's a good system.
Yeah. And we both came from large families. There were, 10 of us and 12 of them.
Sure, the wedding was like massive.
Yeah, and now getting together is just, sometimes both families, both our immediate families get together and we have a ball, even though they're scattered all over the country. We have reunions and stuff. But yeah.
Since you've retired, how have you maintained involvement with Rust?
Send them a little contribution every year. I mean, once a year, sometimes twice a year. And, you know, being there that long, you got a lot of connections, and I guess as one donor told me one time, you know where all the skeletons are buried. So, you know, time to time somebody called me and need some information on how did y'all do this or that kind of thing. And that's pretty much it. I attended a couple of games, basketball games, but I, you know, I don't, with this COVID and stuff, you know, I didn't, otherwise I would have been at every game and a lot of other activities as well. But as a result of that, and my wife has multiple myeloma now, I think I mentioned earlier. So, you know, I certainly don't want to get something to carry home to her, so I don't go very often, but sometimes somebody will call me and ask me to come over and show them something or whatever. But when I made my mind up 5 years before I retired, you know, when I was going to retire. And so I not only had been planning it all along, but not only did I plan financially, I planned, I guess, mentally, emotionally, because some people say, oh, so you won't be able to retire. I mean, you spent all your life there and blah, 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 blah. But that, you know, the first 6 months were tough in that, you know, I wake up every morning to go to work. So some mornings I would even jump up in the bed and say, oh my God, I'm gonna be late. And, you know, but I mentally had adjusted, in my mind, I adjusted for it. So it hasn't been difficult for me at all. And, you know, they say, oh, you're gonna miss it, you're gonna miss it. No, I haven't
Have you
missed
spent
it.
the time in any specific way?
Doing what I want to do when I want to do it, you know, and that's not being facetious. That's just one weakness that I've always had was to say no, you know. So I always had a lot of things going, and people that ask you to do this, okay, yeah, okay. So I've learned to say no and enjoy that part of it. You know, I'm a member of Rotary, and we, of course, my fraternity that I mentioned, and then Sigma Pi Phi Boule, which is another organization that I belong to, which is the oldest black fraternity in the world. And there was a time you had to be about the age I am now to even be able to get in it. There's only about 5,000 members worldwide, but and you have to be invited, you know, to become a member. And it's supposed to signify that you have made it, you have accomplished, and you know, you're financially stable and all. That's what it's supposed to signify. So I don't know how I got in there, but you know, I hold a position. It's called Thesaurustes in that organization, and so those things, you know, keep me busy. And then of course I got property that rental property and stuff that I take care of. So I'm busy. And I got a couple of little small farms too. One tree farm and then another farm that my nephew pretty much takes care of. He's got horses and cows and sheep and chickens and everything else on there.
Yeah, you sound plenty busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I would like to briefly just return back to your childhood. You grew up on a farm in the 1950s and 60s. What was that like?
That, believe it or not, I think that was the foundation of everything that I've accomplished. And I say that because growing up, I was the second child. My brother was 13 months older than me, and for as long as I can remember, I was always taller than him, and then he was just downright lazy too. And my dad would work construction, and so once we, got the ground ready for planting and did the planting and all that stuff, I pretty much took care of that little farm. And in the beginning we had horses that we used to farm. Then we eventually got old John Deere tractor that I'd have to work on a half a day and to get it going. But I think that helped me with my leadership skills. And people would say, I'd hear him tell my daddy, I don't know how in the world fix that tractor, keep that old tractor going. But it was just, after a while, it was kind of like I built it, because when something happened, I knew what it was and patch it up and keep going. But my dad giving me that responsibility, I think went a long way. And believe me, you had to earn everything you got. And I always wanted to finish our crops and stuff, and then go across the road, and because they had hundreds of acres over there, and work to get in that wood and to get my school clothes and that kind of thing. Yeah. Work for 50 cents an hour, $4 a day, $24 a week.
I believe that brings an end to our questions.
I mean, usually the last thing I like to say at least is there anything that you wish we had asked you, or just anything that you want to finish out on?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered it, and then, as always, I'll probably on my way home, I'll think something. I should have mentioned. Well, let me just mention this. My best friend, who's my cousin, and I've known all my life. And we were college roommates, and he lives in Cordova, Tennessee now. But we grew up together from, I don't know, time we could walk. And that closeness and that friendship has lasted all these. I'll be 73 Friday, and has lasted that length of time. But the same thing with fraternity brothers, ones that were on my line and ones who went before me and ones who've come after me. There's a close knit friendship and true friendship. And I used to say, if you've got 3 true friends, you're in pretty good shape. But I can say that, and I think that's one reason life has been good to me, that I have true friends, that I could call on, and they would be there, if possible. They would be there front of. I didn't mention, my mom's still living. Yeah, she's 92, and 10 children that lived. She had one miscarriage that I know of, but as I mentioned in the beginning, the doctors thought she wouldn't make it, nor my brother, and the doctors told her at that point, say, don't you have any more children? You know, you can't have more children. Having more children is going to kill you. 9 more of us lived after that, and only the last 2, I guess, were born in the hospital. And one interesting side note, and I'll be done. My oldest son is from March to August older than my baby brother.
Wow.
and my baby brother lives in Florida, Cape, right outside Fort Myers, Cape Coral, or something like that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dr. Ishmell Edwards, thank you so much. Enjoy your birthday on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
You gotta go around. The Bear Bryant Museum is like a church.
Okay.
You walk in, I've never seen a museum.
I've been to the whole thing.
Yeah, but this, you walk in, it's got everything in there, just like you do. What do you mean? You go in, you're quiet. You don't want to sit.